So, hello, Jared. Really welcome to Brazil, even in a virtual way. It's really nice to have you here. I'm really happy that we were able to connect. So, many thanks for donating your time for us here. We really appreciate.
Of course. Thank you for having me. I really appreciate it.
So I always like to start, Jared, asking people, what is your background? So what do you do right now, and how you ended up in behavior analysis? I know that you do your PhD. I don't want to give too much away. I want to let you tell us, but you finished your high school, and then what did you do? I like to
Well,
start at this point.
perfect. Well, I went to my undergraduate courses and I went to go get my bachelor's, and I was in psychology. My plan was to be a clinical psychologist, and I wanted to learn why people do what they do. After I got out of my 4 years from my bachelor's, I realized the only job that I can get with my bachelor's is being a behavior therapist. So I was like, okay, I'll do it. Let's see what it's like. And I immediately started working with kids, and I loved it. I'm just a big kid. I want to go to recess as much as all of them. I want to go play games. So I was like, hey, let's just do this work real quick, and then we could go play. Okay, just do it, and I was really good at working with them and providing reinforcers at the right moments. And I was working with, I'm a kind of tall big guy, so they gave me a lot of the aggressive kids, and I learned how to really well work with them and how to change their behavior so that they were able to be within the classroom, and everybody felt safe and they were learning, and they're like, it was really awesome, and I loved it. I loved going to work. But I realized that I don't know as much as I could. I could be doing better. So I was like, okay, so how can I learn more? So I went to go get my master's at the Chicago School of Professional Psychology in applied behavior analysis. And that's where I really started learning about the science of behavior. My professor, Dr. Henry Slinger, he really taught us the science of behavior. I think that's Verbal Behavior by Skinner you have in the back.
Yeah.
I actually have it right here. I'm working on reading it again. He taught us the science so well and so particularly, and I was in the front of his class. I was always answering questions, not always right, but I was trying,
Yeah.
and I loved it. And then in another class, I had a professor who had taught at Morningside, and which is a school where it's
Mhm.
basically a lab school, and they use precision teaching and direct instruction.
Yeah.
And we learned about precision teaching and the standard acceleration chart and how you can measure the rate of learning. And he told us one time, I would precision teaching is so particular. You can see right before a kid gets sick, and he could predict that a kid was about to get sick, and then of course they would miss a few days and they would call in sick. And I was like, well, how does that happen? So later on I went to Fit Learning, and I wanted to be a student and learn how to do math because my math was really bad, which we've learned that,
Oh,
or
this comforts me because you now are a guy who is on the measurement side, and you were bad in math. So there is hope for all of us, because this is a thing that everyone complains here. Oh, I'm not good
Mhm.
at math. I'm not good at graphs. This is like the module in our course that students
Mhm.
has the most difficult time. So you
Well,
are
I
giving
hope
us hope.
Yeah, no, I hope that people understand that it's not that they are bad at math, it's that they haven't had the instruction to provide them the necessary tools to be good at math. That's really what it is. It's a teaching problem, and the problem is on the teacher, not the learner. In precision teaching, we say the learner is always right. So it's really our learning history that has been failed, not us. So I had that, and I recognized that. And one day, I was going through my allergies and I was sneezing and I couldn't do my timings right. And I told them about that story of that professor that said that they could tell they were getting sick. And all of my times were lower. and all my scores were lower because I wasn't able to perform because I'm sniffling and I'm sneezing. And you can see that on the chart. So I was like, wow, you can really see these really small changes, which can make a big difference in performance. And that's when I fell in love with precision teaching, because I was like, we need to apply this measurement to our science to make it science with a capital S and not science with a lowercase s. And there's many reasons why. I mean, I have a few videos that kind of describe why we need to use better measurement systems, but a lot of people don't learn about it. So I'm not mad at people for not using the chart, because a lot of times they don't learn about it. And then when they do, it seems so difficult and hard to learn that there's that barrier of access. So it's like, oh man, that's a lot of work. I mean, I'm just going to stick with what I know. But if you break it down, you show the benefits and you show how much they're losing. Like, your learners can be losing a lot of instructional opportunities because their behavior isn't shown on the standard acceleration chart, which is why I went to, during my master's program, I went to a workshop taught by Dr. Richard Cabina. I had his book and I was going to bring it, and I was like, I'm going to get it signed by him.
Yeah.
I'm just a big nerd. I'm excited. So I went there and I was answering all the questions, and it's like, oh, this guy must know a little bit. And I was like, yeah, I just read your book. And after, I found him on Instagram and I asked him, hey, is there anywhere that they do precision teaching and I can get my PhD in precision teaching? And he said, well, I'm a professor at Penn State University. If you want, you could try to get in, and I could work with you and we can see if you get in, and you can come learn precision teaching from me here. And now I'm here at Penn State University learning under Dr. Cabina. So all of that through an Instagram DM.
Wow, that's great, because people should know that you did not live in Pennsylvania. So Penn State University, so in Brazil, just to give a hint. Penn State University is a really well-known and important university of Pennsylvania, but you are not from Pennsylvania.
Absolutely not. I'm from San Francisco. I'm from the other coast.
Other
So I'm from
coast.
California, and I had to come here. I'll tell you, if they weren't paying me to get this degree, I would not have come here ever. But I came because I knew that I could learn and I could have the opportunity to help others learn. And it's a great thing. I'll also say, as soon as I get my degree, I'm going back. But for the meantime, I am happy to be able to have the opportunity to grow.
I see that Saul said, for the our students who are used to, they know that Saul is their teacher, Salvador Ruiz, and he did the same, but he does not live so far away, because currently he lives in New York. He's from New York, New Jersey. So, but you are far from, and you plan to go back to your city.
Yeah, ideally, I mean, the short-term goal is to be a professor at Stanford University. Stanford is like probably 30 minutes away from where I grew up, where my parents' house is. And I didn't go to that school, but I've been to the campus many times. My best friend's sister played softball there. So I would like to be a professor there and teach behavior science and precision teaching, and do some research there.
Oh, great. I'm sure that this will happen. It's just a matter of time. And how long do you still have to stay in the green state of Pennsylvania? Because lots of green.
Yes. Well, if all goes well, I should be able to finish my degree in one more year, because I'm working on my dissertation now. So hopefully by summer of 2024, I am defending my dissertation and moving forward with my career.
Oh, I'm sure your parents will be happy to have you there, and all your
Yes.
family and your sister. So that's a good point that you brought. on the pathway that you were on. And so you finished your bachelor's degree, and with a bachelor's degree, there is not much you can do in the United States. That it's, as we talked before, starting this recording, super different from Brazil. So as with your bachelor's degree, it's a bachelor's degree in psychology.
Yes, a bachelor's of arts in psychology.
So you could be a therapist that worked with, for example, psychotherapy, things like that.
Well, it was called behavior therapist. A behavior therapist is actually a term coined by Ogden Lindsley, but you might call it an RBT, a registered behavior technician,
Okay.
or a behavior
Okay.
interventionist.
Okay.
I was that kind of therapist. I was supposed to implement behavior analytic programs with usually children at school or at home. Now, I also I had two jobs when I started. I also worked at H&M. And I'll tell you, when we talk about that math thing, they put me on the register. I did not know what I was doing.
Not the best place.
Yeah, so I quit that job pretty quickly, and I was like, I like working with the kids, so I'm just going to do that full time. But there's not much I could do. When I went on LinkedIn, that's really the only job. I mean, there was a lot of opportunities to do that one thing, but there wasn't much else.
And the average of payment was almost all the same, right? So it's an hourly payment, and usually it's I don't know, it will depend on the state, but 20, 16 an hour.
Yeah, so this was in California, and I graduated in 2014.
Okay.
So they have one of the better minimum wages, but I was probably getting paid maybe $2 above minimum wage. So if minimum wage was $15, I was probably getting about $17 an hour. And that was my starting rate. So after 4 years of a degree, thousands of dollars in debt, tens of thousands. I mean, that piece of paper costs a lot of money. I only got $2 above minimum wage when I began straight out the field. And the training was not that much. It wasn't that good. I mean, I appreciate them, but they pretty much just gave us quick training and pushed us out there because they needed bodies working with these kids.
Yeah, that's a point that actually today my husband and I, we were talking about this, that you don't put someone less trained, because like you had a 4-year education, but you were not you did not receive a 4-year training on what you were doing on this kind of job. So it's not common in other professions to put a less trained people to be with the client or the patient for the most amount of time. So for example, you don't send someone to do surgery in your place because they had received like a program to do this. The whole system of this profession, when we have the less trained people with the most amount of hours with the final client, I don't know, but who had this idea? This idea is to benefit insurance. Is to benefit. So we will put the majority of hours to be performed, to be done by the people who receive less money. So it's cheaper for us who are paying. It does not make sense.
It doesn't make sense to this degree. I'll tell you, the first client I ever saw was a 3-hour one-on-one session, and I was supposed to have my supervisor come, and she texted and told me that she could not make it. So I am here with a 3-4-year-old trying to work with them, have no idea what I'm doing. This is the first time I've ever seen the binder with all these programs. I have no idea what they mean or what they are or what kind of notes I'm supposed to take or what kind of thing I'm supposed to do with this kid. It's just me and this kid looking at each other and me having no idea what to do for 3 hours. And that is terrible. I feel bad to this day because I mean, it wasn't my fault, I know, but I wasn't put in a position to be successful with the client, and the client had to be provided services that were inadequate for them to be able to, grow how we want them to grow. And it shouldn't be like that. But I think that the way that the model is set up now, after all this time, it's lucrative. It gives the companies a lot of money to be able to do this. And that's quite unfortunate because it reinforces this problematic system.
Yeah, that's true. And it's so I don't know, it's funny is not the word, but it's funny in a way that it's curious, because at least here in Brazil, we don't see this happening in any other field. So, for example, a nurse, she has like a big training on her nursing program before she takes care of the patients. So we should not put anyone in the position that you were put because you were looking for a job, you needed the job. And what we most see is people, they like to talk about supervision and ethics. That's a thing that I listen, at least here in Brazil, a lot. You need to have supervision. Supervision is super important. You need to be ethical. But this same people, they don't provide the right supervision because they do a lot what was done to you. Because this is what I hear the most with our students, and they are professionals. They are usually psychologists or SLPs or from education. They did a 4 years bachelor, 4 or 5 years bachelor's degree program, and they went to do some applied behavior analysis services to provide. And many of them works for other people, for an agency or something like that. But they are not prepared. And here it's even worse because you would not believe, but usually many of the supervisors, they say, oh, you need to improve communication. They don't write the program. They just say to you, oh, you need to make opportunities for this child to interact more or to communicate, but they don't write for you the program. They just like, oh, I give you an idea of what you have to do. And they don't know the client. Like they many times they don't even know the name of the client. But the therapists that are with the kids like every day or twice a week, 3 times a week, they know all the things about those clients, all their preference, what it works, what does not work. Many of them had worked with other kids, with other autistic kids. And then we have a supervisor that arrives and say, first, they make more money than the therapists, like 3, 4, 5 times more. And when this therapist, they want to say, oh, I'm doing this, I'm doing that, oh, this is not working, they don't listen. So it's so bad because we are having many people that they gave up. They say, I don't want to be a part of that. For example, we have a psychologist. This is a classic story that I received on my DM. Someone who did a 5-year bachelor's degree, and here they have other opportunities. They don't need to do the master, so it's not like what happened to you. No, he can be a psychologist and work in any field that he wants, as a psychotherapist, or be hired for a school to be a educational psychologist, or even work on some company, or even do work for the government, for example. They have many opportunities in the psychology area. And they say, no, I won't do this because I have other opportunities. So I won't be put in this position, because they say, no, you need to do these and international certifications and this, and they do the math, and they say, no, I will pay to work. So this field, it does not it's not good for me. Many of them, they like the kids, they have the they are good with them, they are good therapists, but they are put in a position that they say, no, I have my family, I need to provide to my family, so I cannot be doing this job anymore. So we're losing therapists, and we need more because we don't have enough.
I agree. I think it's a problem that's kind of education wide. So even in education, it's another thing. With us, it's a thing where the powers that be don't necessarily respect those who work with children or work with disabled people, and they see us as really daycare. A lot of the times they're like, oh, you just go over there and do your little ABA thing, and while I can go focus on whatever I need to do. And not as though we're providing a service that could improve their quality of life, their level of independence, and all of these magical things that they also need to be a part of so they can learn how to better work with their kid. We have a powerful science, but if we don't embed that science in an instructional design that results in beneficial outcomes, then it's going to be problems. And it's not only beneficial outcomes for the client, but also for the behavior therapists. They need to come into contact with reinforcement, not only, oh, my client is doing well in their learning, but also I'm paid enough to continue this. I mean, I saw a person, she was brand new, and she was working with one of the most aggressive kids that I had ever seen. And I was like, I wonder why I'm not on that kid. And one day, the kid bit her, and she was like, oh my God, get him off. And she never, and then she got bit, she was bleeding, and she had to come back the next day with the same kid, not knowing what to do, that she didn't get support. And eventually they put me on the kid, and things happened because I knew I had a better understanding of the science. But you just think about that, and that's probably happening a lot, not only in the US, but also in Brazil. How many people are just placed with individuals, they have no idea what they're doing, and they don't have adequate training, and it's a problem that we're not addressing in a good way, and it's really harming the science. It's harming the what people see us as, because people don't have a good view of behavior analysts or behavior scientists or BCBAs, and they haven't for the entire length that we have been a thing. We have been very bad at advertising.
Yeah, for sure. So we were talking about you entering the program, your PhD, you did your master, you were okay, like you learned a lot. You were probably working during your masters. It was when you got your BCBA.
Yeah, so I was working the entire time I was doing my master's every other weekend, working overtime during the week. I worked overtime for 7 years straight. Wow. And 4 of those years, it was about 4 years it took me to get my master's, because some not fun practices by the university I attended. But I didn't get my BCBA until after I graduated with my master's, and then I started my PhD program, and I tried to take the exam. I emailed them because I'd already emailed them saying, hey, the 5th task list is about to come out in a month. It was like December, and I was like, I really need to take this. When can I take it? And I hadn't studied yet. And they said, oh, you can take it tomorrow. And I was like, okay. I mean, I guess before it turns into the fifth
Uh-huh.
task list. So I took the exam and I failed. I failed. So I had to take it again and I had to take the fifth task list. So I studied every day. I used this app called the ABA Wizard. I got 100% on everything, and then I passed the next time I took it. And it was a tough ride all the way through. But for me, I never wanted to be a supervisor. I always felt joy working with the kids and actually being on the ground
Mhm.
and, being there.
Hands
But I
on.
knew exactly. But I was always told, one, you already have the hours, you've already done all the work, and being a BCBA will open a lot of doors. So got the piece of paper. Um, and I really learned so much by being in school and working at the same time. It's a hard thing to do, and it really is difficult. I don't know how me or any of my cohort members did it, but as you go through your classes, you're seeing these concepts appear. Like when we had to do SAF meds, which are like cards, and you see one side and you got to say the other side. Um, I remember, okay, one of our SACMED terms is a prompt, which is supplemental antecedent stimuli used to occasion the correct response under the SD that will eventually control the behavior. And then I saw it, and I saw it happening.
Uh-huh.
And while the words didn't make sense at the time that I learned it, when I saw it in real life, I was like, oh, okay. And then I just
That's
got to do
it.
this. And then
Uh-huh.
you have your little toolkit. And Dr. Schlinger, the man that I say taught me behavior science, he said, I'm not going to just, I'm not going to, what I'm going to do is I'm going to give you tools to be able to deal with whatever situation comes about. With behavior science, you will have, if you understand the science fully, then you'll be able to understand how to work with almost any behavior and how to manipulate environmental variables to change the frequency of the behavior. And that's what we learned. And every time I see something, I'm like, okay, we could probably do that. We could do that. We could do that. And I'm asking questions, and I'm like, okay, let me see. And that's how you learn. So I had to be learning it from the books and actually in the environments where the kids are to see it in action.
Oh, that's the best combination that you had, because you really, like, you incorporated the concepts, and that's one of the things that I think that it's most difficult. You be able to generalize your knowledge and the concepts. That's the what I think that people, when they start the module on principles or the philosophy, they say, oh, I don't know if I'm getting this, it's so hard, it's so much theory, I'm not getting. And I say, okay, just give you time, watch the classes, do your reading, but give it time. You need time to adjust all these concepts, and you be able to interiorize all this knowledge and put in action, and seeing in action, when you, like, you see it, and then you just, oh, I know this, and I know, and then it stays more fluent. But you need to give it time. So that's always what I say.
Exactly. I agree. I mean, I also think that a lot of times we see things and we're like, oh yeah, you just, provide reinforcement for that, provide reinforcement for that. But like how you do it. For instance, I had a client and he was mad every time they would give him a piece of paper to do homework or to do work on the table, he would rip it up, right? So I would put it down and I would say, okay, what's the problem? And he's like, oh, there's too many, I can't do all this. And he was gonna rip it. And I was like, okay, well, how about this? Instead of doing all 20, let's just do 2. And then we can move on and we can take a break. Does that sound good? And it's like, oh, yeah, only 2? I could do 2. So he did 2. So I let him escape from something that he felt was aversive, and that reinforced it. So I was like, okay, now you got to do 4. You did 2 last time. That
Mhm.
was too easy. You got to do 4. Okay, Mr. Jared, fine, I will. So you're using these things that you learn, but you don't have to use them in the exact example that you were given. You have to figure out how it works for different people in different situations and in different environments.
And this, what you were telling, is so funny, because uh depending on the person that you were learning ABA from, like in the United States, or for people who read in English, is an advantage because you can learn from the source. So you can read, you can find other people. For me, for example, at the beginning, it was really lonely because I was alone, and I had to learn alone, and I had no one to go and exchange ideas, because all the idea of ABA was so like, it needs to be this. If it is written in the program, you need to do this. So the example that you just gave, if it was not written in the program, the therapist could not do it, and he could be like criticized for doing this, even if that like you had the result, you avoided a behavioral problem, and he did the two exercises, and then you can move to 4 and 6 and 10, and then you go. This is what people need to understand. You need to be flexible, and that's like, you can do it ABA. I don't like this term on doing ABA because it makes an impression of a methodology, a thing that you were doing. But I know that it's disseminated on providing ABA therapy. You can provide, and you can be flexible, and you can be nice and cool and human. You can laugh. You can do things on the floor. You can do things at the park. You don't need to be on a white room, sitting in a chair and a table, and this is ABA. And if you are not doing this, this is not ABA, right?
Exactly. And I think that, like, what you said is so true. It harkens back to the learner is always right, because all of their behavior is telling you where they're at. And what we need to do is we need to meet those learners where they're at. So what I did was like, okay, I see this is where you're at. So we're going to change the environment to increase the probability of the behavior that we want to see. That is really enriching the environment. When we talk about people that are just, at a table in a right room, matching, that's unfortunately what a lot of people think ABA is. But really, behavior science is happening around us all the time. Whether we try to choose it happening or not, it's happening. You walk into a room with the lights off and you stub your toe. Next time you turn the light on before you walk because you don't want to step on the Lego. It's happening no matter where you're going. We just need to see what's going on, what has happened in the past, and how can we increase the probability of the thing that we want to happen in the future.
Yeah, that's really a perfect example. And I would like you to talk about and tell us, most of people don't know what is precision teaching. And it was one of the reasons that you entered, that you went to your PhD program. And usually people, they know about that data is important. How precision teaching give us a different aspect of data, because usually people are just use it to the graphs of lines, and doing spreadsheets on Excel or some software. What precision teaching brings to the table that, let's call it, classic ABA on the way of collecting data does not.
Perfect. Well, of course, one of the biggest things people will say is the standard acceleration chart, which is this chart that's the same wherever you go. Like if you're at a doctor and you get an EKG, if I got an EKG here and I was like, okay, I see this is the graph from the EKG, and then I went to Brazil and they got an EKG there, it'd be the same graph, and they could read it and they would both come up with the same understanding of what's going on.
They cannot even speak the same language, but they will see the same thing.
Exactly. And the standard acceleration chart provides that same standardization so that every chart is the same. The scaling of the axes are the same. The problem with regular graphs that people use and put in Excel is that you can make your data look more or less significant. So you can say, oh, look at that line. It's so steep. So there must be a really good effect. But it just because you scaled it the way you did, you can scale it to 50 and it looks like this. But if you scale it to 100, it's going to go flatter. And it's like, well, you're just manipulating the data, making it look like you're having an effect. And you can't know because you just made up the scaling with whatever you want. It's kind of wild, wild west. And it's not science. In science, we have units of measurement that are standard. Another thing that is there is like we don't have sessions. We put days. Which day is it? Because if you say, oh, session 1, 2, 3, 4, well, how long is a session? Are all the sessions the same length? How much time between each session? Did more than one session happen on one day? So many questions that are not answered. Another thing that we have is the way that we describe behavior. In regular behavior analysis, people use an operational definition. And it's usually super long. A lot of times it's more than one behavior in it. People just slap together words and then they say, okay, well, this looks like, this is what we think is the behavior. But in precision teaching, we use a pinpoint plus, which is a specific, it's a specific formula for describing behavior. So if I say writes word on paper, everybody knows what writes word on paper is, and we can count the number of times that happens and then put it back onto that chart. And finally, one of the things that I think that is really important in precision teaching is that we measure in frequency, which is count over time. We do not use percent correct. Percent correct is not the measure that we want to use when we're measuring behavior, because it really doesn't tell us the exact number of occurrences. Like if you say, oh, they got 100%, the best way I can explain it is, let's say there's a math test. I know we got a lot of math examples here. I'm sorry, but everybody has to come into contact with math. And two students get 100% on the same math test. Now, if this student right here got 100% in 10 minutes, and this student in here got 100% in an hour, who knows more? Well, the person that got in 10 minutes. But on the test, it looks the same because of the percentage. And we can't tell that one student knows the content better than the next. And then they move on to the next material that's more difficult, and then they start struggling because they don't have what we call fluency, which is the combination of accuracy and speed. We need to measure accuracy and speed to determine how fluent someone is. Like if someone is playing a musical instrument on a piano, like you have to have fluency. You can't just press G, B, A. No, you have to be GBA, GBA, GBA. You have to be able to find those keys accurately and quickly. And that's how we determine if someone is good at something or if someone has competence or skill. If I talk like this and you don't have fluency, it's difficult to have a conversation. Fluency is so key with our behavior that it really defines good performance. And if we're not measuring in frequency to see if there is fluency or to try to get people to have fluency, then we're not going to have strong behavior.
Great. I think that's really the point. And I don't know why people don't learn this when they learn about applied behavior analysis. Probably it's because I usually say this, that everything that is on the task list is not what you need to be a good therapist. It's not just that. You need much more. You need so much more to be a good therapist. That what is it on the task list? Here in Brazil, we don't have this system. We don't have the BACB, but just to say that you need so much more than what it is on the task list to be a good therapist. So for starter, you need to know about the population that you were working on. So if you work on behavioral gerontology, for example, you need to know about elderly people. You need to know their ups and downs, their health issues, their security issues. So you need to know about this population. It is the same principles. It is the same science that you are applying, but you need to know the environment and the population.
Absolutely. And I think that it's more important for you to be a behavior scientist than a behavior analyst, because the BACB has only been around since 1998. Precision teaching has been around since, like, was it the 60s, the 1960s, I think, maybe a little bit before that. And behavior science has been around since, like, I want to say the 1920s, 1930s, something like that. The science is what's going to make you effective. And you can have behavior science without applied behavior analysis, but you can't have applied behavior analysis without behavior science. And that's the backbone of everything we do. So whatever is on that task list is a collection of things that a group of people picked, and they take things off and put things on whenever they so feel like it. At least it seems like to me. And they're not following with the best scientific practices, which is ironic because that is an ethical guideline. Best scientific practice would be for everybody to use the standard acceleration chart, which everybody could use and learn. But to choose not to put it on there is a choice, and it diminishes the quality of our science, and it diminishes the quality of the services at the end of the day. So if one attends to knowing and learning the behavior, the science of behavior, they'll be much better off than really focusing on being a BCBA.
Yeah, and we do not know what is governing their behavior. The group of people, we don't know what is governing their behavior, because it's so obvious the importance of precision teaching, and we have so many BCBAs working on school settings, and direct instruction is also like a huge asset for people who work on school settings, who teaches academic behaviors, and we don't have this. So speaking about, we don't have ACT on the task list, that it's another side that it's really important, another field, another application that it's super important, that could make us more human, more compassionate, and we don't have this. So people need to understand that the BACB is not perfect, and it is an organization with people who acts with their own bias. So we need to keep our eyes open and think about what is best for the population that we serve.
Agreed. And what I've kind of noticed is some of the people that I look up to the most, some of the people that have been in the field of behavior science the longest and have contributed the most are not BCBAs.
Yeah.
And if they were, they gave that up.
Yeah.
And there's multiple reasons. Everybody has their own reason, but it should kind of tell people something. These people that have been in the field for a very long time before the BACB was, made, they are like, that's not determining the quality of service. What's really quality is the understanding of the science and how to apply it. And passing a test and getting a couple hours isn't going to cut it, unfortunately.
Yeah, because you can prepare for a test and be fluent in the test, knowing how to do a test, but knowing how to be a therapist, now how to apply the science, is a very different ability and behavior, a very different behavior.
Mm-hmm.
So we need to be, we need to see this, because I like to talk about this, and you brought points that I think that will give a lot of relief for many Brazilians, because many people who has the BCBA before, when you could do this, because now you cannot do anymore if you don't live in the United States, they feel that they are better than those who don't. That's what I keep telling people. No, this therapist, he's not better than you because he is a BCBA. No, you need to give this idea away. Please erase this from your mind. This is not the point. So I always, and they feel less and they feel devaluated, and so their behavior is not being reinforced, and they don't, like, they say, oh, I don't want to be at this field anymore. And many times we are losing a great therapist because of the system. So that's what we are trying to encourage, for this do not happen anymore.
And between you and me and whomever's watching, I can't tell you how many times I had a supervisor who it was clear that I was a much better practitioner than them, but they just had that piece of paper. And it's sad how often that happens. And one thing that B.F. Skinner said is like, look, you're going to make mistakes. He said, a mistake is not always a mistake. Sometimes it's the best one can do at that time. The real mistake is to stop trying. So we need to try again. I've had so many times where I felt, oh, I didn't do the right thing, or, oh, this kid didn't, they didn't have the behavioral outcome that I wanted, or it was a really tough day and it's going to be hard tomorrow. But when you come back, try again, and you build better behavior, it's an amazing experience for everybody. And the people that you work with will never forget the kind of things that you helped them do.
Yeah, that's a great incentive to everyone. And I want to let you go, but first I need to address your video in response that we translated into Portuguese. In this video, that everyone can see is on our Instagram. You told what happened. And you gave a response that why this should not be addressed. And now, during this week, we saw many replies. We know that it will have a conference. I would like to know if you have anything else to add to this. I know that it's a huge thing that we could spend like hours talking about this. But what I am seeing is that people on the other side are trying to justify that it's okay to make some questions, that we are just reasoning, we are just questioning, we are not encouraging no one to do harm, but it's okay to question. And I had discussed this matter with my husband, who is a lawyer, and I went to law school. I did 5 years on law school. I did not tell you this before. And a law student is a student who argues, who makes questions, but some things we should not question, because, in my opinion, because it is so obvious, the answer, that we have so much to learn. We have so much about precision teaching, SEC. Should we or should we not replace the graphs for SEC, for example? This is a good questions. These are good reasonings that we should be doing. But some others, when we question if someone should leave or not, if someone contributes to society or not, I don't believe that this is something that should be argued. So I would, after all this week, it was last Friday, I believe, that we knew about this podcast. Actually, was recorded, was on air on May,
Mm.
but as I saw on Spotify. But we just saw that last week, that we started like everyone sending to everyone and talking about. So it has a week. So we had a whole week to reflect, to see, to listen to other parts also. So I just want to know, what are your thoughts like right now? It could change, I know, during the time. But what could you add or say to this particular matter?
I think that it is important that people understand that these questions are dangerous and they incite violence. They may not intend to, but it really increases the probability of other individuals dehumanizing the questioned group. So, for instance, I'm a Black American, and in our country, we had a history of enslavement where Black people were seen as less than human or not human and unequal to white people. And there is a clear path of the dehumanization and questioning of others' value and existence that leads to oppression. And there is a certain level of privilege one must contain to be able to think that it's okay to ask these questions because they're part of a group, most likely, that hasn't had to deal with that. I mean, you had time in the Holocaust where people who were of Jewish descent, who were there, they were questioned, and it was really problematic in that podcast for them to say that the Nazis were a practical, or had a practical idea. Like, they did not. They were terrible, evil behaviors that were committed against other individuals. And I just don't understand why you're in this field if you hold those views. Um, and I personally believe you shouldn't be in this field if you hold those views. I don't think that I wouldn't want anybody I know to be
Yeah.
getting your services. And passing around, the unfortunate part is, regardless, I, I know that regardless of what I say, I don't think it's going to change much because, as we know from behavior science, there is a verbal community reinforcing the
Mhm.
behavior. And it probably started out as just asking questions. But where does that get to? We can understand that the intensity of a behavior will increase over time depending upon reinforcement and how that reinforcement is provided and what level the behavior was at when the reinforcement was provided. So these questions open the door to potential reinforcers that can result in further harm. And in my view, it's a clear misunderstanding of the science as well, not to wonder, well, why can't I ask these questions? That tells me you don't know the science of behavior. One, I think you're kind of a bad person. And two, you don't know the science of behavior. You just don't understand it that well. So I think that I would say there's no room in our science for that, but I don't anticipate like the BACB bringing down anything or stopping it or anything because they don't have a history of doing so. I've received many messages about harm being done and the BACB receiving information and reports going in as they're supposed to, yet no change has occurred. And it's not just the BACB. I mean, contact I've had to contact people because I saw harm being done to children, and I was like, "Hey, I'm a mandated reporter. I'm reporting this happening. Please have somebody come and do something." And I filled out the whole report. It took months for anybody to come. By that time, it looked like nothing was happening and nothing changed. So there are systemic issues within our society that allow these behaviors to perpetuate and continue. So a conversation is not the consequence that I think is going to fix the problem, unfortunately. And I'm worried that a continuation of the conversation about the specific individuals involved, especially if those specific individuals are named, I'm worried that that's going to reinforce the behavior because I'm like, oh, I'm getting attention. I wanted attention. So then what they said, they just say more and it increases and it goes further, because these people have not apologized or walked back the statement. They've kind of stuck to what they've said. And I think that's problematic. I mean, one person may have said, I take accountability, but just because you said you took accountability doesn't mean you're taking accountability. That's not how taking accountability works. So until we see changed behavior, I don't really have a lot of hope for changed behavior, unfortunately.
Yeah, because we are normalizing a talk. That's, I think that one of the biggest issue here. We are trying to normalize something that it's not normal. So it's not normal for someone to rape another person. And for example, in Brazil, we have this debate that to maybe I think that in the United States too, like to blame the victim. So, for example, if you were raped, it's because you were using a short skirt. I see like in the same way. So if you and I were now here discussing, oh, and I put a question, oh, should someone be blamed because she was raped, but she was wearing a short skirt, and this did not provoke the behavior of others. Like, this should not be a talk. Like, this should not be a question. We should not normalize, because when we started to talking and going to conferences and being socially reinforced, that we know that social reinforcement is very powerful with people. Like, many people, they value social reinforcement more than money, for example, that so that's why it's so problematic, because we are putting a conversation as normal that was not supposed to be normal.
Exactly. And also, a debate, I think there's a problem that people think, oh, if we debate and I win, then I'm right. That's not true. We could debate about things and one side can be completely wrong and that person can win the debate. A debate is not about finding the truth or about finding what is what is ethically, morally right. It is really about using your skills to argue your point. So having these questions and debating these things isn't at all okay thing to do to try to get to the truth of the matter or to really understand something. And like you said, normalizing this stuff is really problematic. And I think that it leads down that line of dehumanization. And behavior science is really about humanizing the client or the people to be able to provide them with the skills that they might need to better interact with their environments. We open that up for them. We try to help them so that they can better be able to, use a pencil so they can write down what they want. We want to be able to have them be able to ask or demand more. These are things we want to teach them so they can get what they need in a better way. And that's our job. And then to dehumanize them is just, it's just a really unfortunate behavior that you really hope to never see.
And other point that here my followers took attention, and then I spoke about this privately with our students in a supervision encounter. We talked about how bad was it to say it or to suggest that the people with some deficiency, with some disability, that they were that they could contribute to society because they helped me, for example, to buy a house, or to, as the other professional suggested, it is thanks to them that I have a job. Because if it did not existed autistic, I would not have a job. So, like, that's the way you see your job. Like, it's okay to make money, you deserve to make money. People need to understand that I am not criticizing people who want to make money and they deserve it, because it's the money that comes through your job. So that's okay. But you suggest, I don't know, that they're only, or one of the few contributions that they could give is for you to be able to have a job and provide to your family, to buy a house. Like, this person said, that it is thanks to my job that I could buy a house and provide. And and this is a point that it really was not seen with a good eyes here, for you to say that, no, they contribute in these ways, and indirect contribution and things like that. Like,
Yeah, I mean, I
why
think that
do
the
you
whole
have these ideas? Like, I can't understand.
well, I mean, I think the whole idea of like people having to contribute or provide value is problematic. People don't need to provide value to be for them to be valuable. I mean, this whole system we have where like literally rain falls from the sky and we need to drink water to survive. And plants grow from the ground and we need to eat some of those plants to survive. Those could be free. But the system that is set up right now has made it transactional. And that makes it seem like things cost money when in actuality, I could literally plant an apple tree and eat apples and drink water. Like these are things that, I mean, we've created the system. So I think that this is a great opportunity for people to read Paulo Freire's Pedagogy of the Oppressed. He didn't go into education as much as I wish he had, but I think that he really went into a lot of things that kind of talk about oppression and this system of thinking that people need to constantly provide value, likely to the day that they die, is part of an oppression that keeps us tilling the fields and working until we die, which we shouldn't. I wish we didn't have to do that. I mean, I wish we didn't have to do all that, but I understand people need to make money now to do it. But you cannot, once you see people as dollar signs, you're dehumanizing them. And that's where that dehumanizing part comes in. So it's this culture that has been created. And we kind of need to tell people, hey, like, I know you've been conditioned to look at this culture in this way, but look deeper into how this conditioning occurs. Use the science of behavior to understand it, and also recognize that is a fellow human being, regardless of identity, of politics. That's a human being. End of the day, they are valuable just because they are human. Period. And animals are valuable too. I mean, I'm vegetarian, so
Yeah.
but I mean, we have to value life. And when people value money over life, that's, I think, one of the ways that these things might occur.
Yeah, that's perfectly. So I want, please, you to come back, because we have so much to discuss, and we can, like, uh, provide so much information and connect people with each other, because we are all part of the same community. No,
Mhm.
not matter our zip code, but we
Mhm.
are, like, we're all humans. We all serve in the same field. We study the same science, or not, because we have people who does not study for applied behavior analysis, but they follow me. They say, I like the way you explain, I like the way you bring. So I know that many of them, like, I always say, oh, give ABA a chance. I know that it has a lot of bad things, but please just give me a chance. And I believe that you are the same, trying to show the other side. So it's so good to be able to meet people with the same values, because this culture that you were talking about is one of the reasons that it's making people with anxiety and depressed, and many taking their own lives on a certain point. And then after things happen, we always keep asking, what could we have done differently? So the time to act is now. So that's why I like to bring all of you guys that I am able to connect through social media, because I know that it's a relief for many. They say, oh my God, I found someone who gets me, even not speaking the same language. But you are bringing a different side, different people. So this is so grateful as a part of my job, that we need to invest to have this content, because we pay the translator, we pay the video editor. So we have lots of people working on this. But this is so good. This is a so good part, because we are making knowledge accessible. So I know that on the long ride, this will pay in many forms. Of course, that money is one of the forms, but also other forms doing good, making people feel listened, know that exist people with different views in ABA. So it's like, you don't know, you will be like doing something else, and in a year from now someone will be listening to us, and many times it is happening something on their lives, and they think, oh, I don't agree with that, I don't agree with this, and I feel so alone, because it seems that everybody feels in the different way. And then they find this video and they are able to watch it and see that there are other people that has the same value. So this is really it warms our hearts. So that's why this is so important.
I agree. And thank you for having me. I hope that people that are listening just understand that ABA, or as I prefer to call it, behavior science, is a tool. And it's a tool that we can use to help, and it's a tool that some people use to harm. We are trying to help. And it's an incredible tool that I hope that you learn about, so that you can be able to help yourself and others as you move along in this one life you have.
Yes. Thank you so much, Jared. I hope we can see you more here on our channel and our platforms. Thank you so much. Have a great weekend. Bye-bye.
You too. Bye-bye.